Welcome, everybody, to the Saddle Road Press first Sunday reading and conversation for July 2025. This reading features poet Carrie Nassif, author of The Vulture Girl, and Gillian Barlow, author of the Hojoki Re-membered, in conversation with each other. Carrie Nassif is a queer poet and psychologist with a private practice living in Taos. The Vulture Girl, Necessary and Sufficient Conditions, is her first full-length book of poetry, the final two poems of which were shortlisted in Frontier Poetry's New Voices contest. The book documents her search for an alleged twin and other potential inner parts, including the discovery of several inner guides: twin, rabbit, old stag, little wing, vulture, fawn, and tornado. Each represents different resiliencies and or roles in the processing of childhood and adolescent mistreatment. Together, they illustrate a metaphorical but no less real pathway for healing from trauma. Gillian Barlow is a writer and registered architect. She has a PhD in writing and society from the University of Western Sydney. Her exegesis was on Aboriginal housing, from which this book emerged. For much of her career, she has worked on Aboriginal housing and primary health buildings. She attended twice the residencies with a room of her own in New Mexico and was a writing fellow at Can Serrat, Catalonia in 2019 and 2022. She lives in Sydney, Australia with her partner, where she works as a researcher on cultural safety and a range of First Nations projects, and continues to train in Aikido. The Hojoki Re-membered is a collection of personal, philosophical, and conceptual essays on the meaning of home and place, on architecture in Australia, houses for Aboriginal people, Australian history, her personal connection with Aboriginal red dirt country, all centering around the Hojoki, an early Japanese text on the human-sized house and on the metaphorical meaning of a number of Japanese characters, a multifaceted journey of coming home to oneself. Welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to Carrie and Gillian.
But we're going to start by just sort of talking about the sort of writing that we felt we were both doing, which is Zui Hitsu, which you may or may not know much about. So I was going to read a piece from my book, The Hojoki Re-membered, about Zui Hitsu, as to sort of start us off. Zui Hitsu is an example of such non-arc driven writing. Zui Hitsu comes from the Japanese. The Hojoki, the 10-foot square hut, is considered to be a Zui Hitsu, as is, say, Shonigan's The Pillow Book, which is considered to be the first example of a Zui Hitsu. Zui Hitsu has definitions, but the definitions reveal little. Most appear to say you can do just as you want. The Pillow Book has lists and memoir and fragments. Lists are one aspect of a Zui Hitsu every definition seems to agree on. Chomai's The Hojoki has no lists. Zui Hitsu, like life, does not proceed along the tidy narrative line that many insist it should. We wallpaper over the parts of our lives that don't fit in tidily, those stains and damp patches on the walls. When someone asks, we say we have the wallpaper there because we like the pattern. The colour is good. It is so much faster to wallpaper than try to paint the walls. But in reality, it is because the stains, the damp, are getting to be embarrassing. In doing this, we start to have secrets. We start to tell lies. For example, life is fragmented. though through writing and storytelling, we are at pains to make it appear a smooth, continuous surface. Fragments of text, remnants of memory, bones of a story. The use of the fragment asks you to remember from word to word, and the accumulation of images and stories allows you to construct and formulate, to become a detective, passing for a moment into some imagined subjectivity where your personal safety is jeopardized. At heart, you are still the reader of the text and able to remember who you once were. It isn't a very big jump to make. You are always fragmented. A sense of solidity is disrupted when you look away and remember an event which happened years before. Fragmentation occurs with memory, and memory produces its own fragments of story that need reframing for consumption. So, yes, how's your work, Zuihitsu? Like,
Funny, I remember reading drafts of your book and thinking, what a fascinating concept. And then after we were assigned to do this together, I'm like, well, crap, I think maybe that's sort of what I'm doing too, even though I've written poetry and you've written nonfiction. And so I have, if I were to read the chapters of my book, each of them represents a different guide that I met, and I'll kind of explain a little bit more. Hi, Lisa. But I'll explain a little bit more about what each of these guides is about. But one of just the chapters feels like a list: twin, rabbit, old stag, little wing, vulture, fawn, tornado. And then I feel like there's different formats of poetry. Some of it is visual. I've got a couple of the last two poems are concrete poems. So the very last one of the book is like half of a vulture, right?
oh,
And
yes.
then, and then there's a friend, a companion, half of a vulture earlier in the work. And then most of them are couplets. And then there's the topics are kind of like Gillian was talking. There's a fragment here, there's a little bit here. Here's some background history. Here's a description of like the process of the writing of the poetry, and here's content of the poetry. And some of the memories are positive, and some of them are negative, and some of them I won't read because they're a little trauma-y, so I don't read them out loud generally because that's a downer. Um, so there's little bits and pieces everywhere. And it was funny because what I like so much about Gillian's book is that there's like this piece here, here's this story, and here's this little symbol that I'm describing how I feel it is. And then here is what that makes me think of, and here's what that makes me think of, and here's what that makes me think of. And it's just this lovely, and it's not I'm making it sound like it's disorganized or rambly, and it's not at all. It comes back into these beautiful arcs. And whether that was the intention or not, there's this juxtaposition of these strange little places. And it makes me think of Ursula K. Le Guin has a craft book called The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction, which I came across serendipitously. And she talks about instead of like the hero's journey, that writing is more of like a medicine bag. Like we just pop some stuff in there and it holds things in relation to each other. And it was reading, or as we were kind of planning this workshop or this reading, I guess, I was reading back through Gillian's book again, and there was a part where you talk about, is it Deleuze and Guattari? I've never know how to say that second name. And they were talking about the
Pretty
rise.
good.
Thank you. Like there's no beginning or end, everything's all the middle, like that stream of consciousness, or like, what is it? It's not affiliation, it's more like a rhizome, which is an alliance, a unique alliance.
Yes.
And that's what I think both of our works end up being, is these alliance of all these different wanderings.
Yeah, but I think your work has a really strong theme through it as
Mm.
well. Like, not just one, sorry, a large number of sort of themes that mine has too, these kind of threads that all sort of pull together.
Mm.
And like with the guides that you've got that sort of pull you together. And your writing to me is so very feminine too. It sort of, includes being a mother and mothering, and birth and kind of evolving and stuff. I think you should read one of your poems so we can.
I was figuring to read your introduction.
Oh,
Um, I I could read, if you want, I could read like the very first poem.
yes, do.
Okay. Because this does go different places as well, just within the poem, right? Okay.
Yes.
So this is a poem about an actual experience that my kiddo and I were on when they were still in school in Manhattan, Kansas, which is kind of out in the sticks. And so for fun, occasionally we would drive on dirt roads to try to get lost and find ourselves again. So it's called Yesterday the Gods Told Me to Fall into My Own Eyes, to find my own frame, to live each breath into the broken body of the rabbit we hit on the dirt road, to inhabit her truths and translate the torn and sinew in quick and gasping breaths, to recall being prey, to stop the car, to gently to cup her pain in my hands, the spare heft of her infant sighs, fur the color and soft of sifted dust, for her to nestle under the grasses, to assign her a place safe from the gullies of tire treads, leave her looking up into the weeds, the green bounding arches into the white spaces carved out around the trees, to set her deep into shade, the black of her eyes in shock, to witness her fleet and dance, drain inert, as if I were holding my vanishing twin, whom I can only assume I'd interrupted, had just the same, had run into, had collided, had absorbed, had invited within. Would her cells retain the stamp of those urges, or the caution not to spring across the road in fear of barreling noises? A quiet wisdom within, of one who had her fatal wounds tended to, who held my hand as I became alone.
So beautiful. So kind of gentle and yeah, just really, really wonderful. I feel like that throughout your work too, the sort of the gentleness, the sort of being held and holding, it's wonderful. It's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes me think of your concept of like the home, and we will take turns reading longer passages of our books, I swear, but we're good friends and we want to chat. Um, but just the idea of the difference between house and home and that openness to all these different places that contribute to it. There's this one quote, I think, I don't know where it is in your book. I have it notated somewhere, but it's like, take, for example, the veranda. I'm like, it is. The veranda is this expression of love in a house. Here's this ample roof. Here's this safe place for you to take a nap and hold and contain you. It's lovely.
Oh, thank you. Um, so I don't know if you want to read that introduction bit because it kind of goes a little bit with what you've just read
Oh,
about self and everything, and then I can,
you can read it.
um, yeah,
Yeah, okay, that sounds lovely. So the first two lines of the introduction read, I mean, it's very creative. It's like a poem, just two quick lines of a poem, and they're vertical bars in between every word. So I'll read the first line, and then I'll pause, and then I'll read the second line, and then I'll get on with it. Home, whole, hail, hall, hell, cell, self. Home, whole, hail, hall, hell, heal, seal, cell, self. All paths lead to self. I want to write about how to get from one place to another, changing step by step as I go from home to self. Fingers crossed I will arrive there at the somewhere I want to be, a home of sorts, myself. I want to do this slowly since that has been the process, and not always have I arrived where I want to be. Ce n'est pas un guide. This is not a map. This is a translation.
thank you.
Yeah.
You read it beautifully. Um, so I was then going to read a little bit about sort of setting up the book, because mine is a book rather than of poems. And so there was a kind of a strong thread through it of translation. So I'll just read this a little bit from that, and then maybe I can read a couple of the translations. This current translation, the one I see as the third translation, started much the same as the original one, where I inserted not only my experiences but other people's in the forms of paintings and photographs into the text. This time I played with a myriad of ways to substitute something in for the kanji to circumnavigate the copyright issues. I spent days changing kanji into a solid shape in Adobe. As the text became a more complex file, it took longer and longer to save, longer and longer to exchange a color shape for an individual kanji. I thought it might help things if I did this substitution manually. I bought small stamps to cover over the kanji. I tried texts. I tried stickers, all in desperation to replicate the original translation. I wondered what I was trying to add by doing this. It would circumnavigate copyright laws, but added little more. The original, using photos and paintings, gave a richness to the translation. The new substitutions paled in comparison. Perhaps a different type of translation. I would abandon the shapes, paintings, colours type of substitution and have the text talk directly to me instead. Using the same kanji I used in the original translation, I located them in the Japanese text I had and correlated them with a line in the English translation of the text by A.L. Sandler I had. For example, if a kanji appeared in line 2 of the Japanese text, I cross-reference it with line 2 in the English text and selected words in the second line. Having been through the entire Japanese text and then the corresponding English text, I used these words and only these words to write a poem. More rules developed over time as I did this. The rules changed from kanji to kanji. It is strange how familiar the words of the poems sound, particularly in these unprecedented times of coronavirus. It is as though the Japanese Hojoki is me speaking whilst in lockdown, where I watch from within my own 10-foot square writing room through a skylight to the sky outside. Life is bleak, yet there is always hope. Problems seemingly so important fade into a single point, surviving without illness. We have had no precedents to prepare us for this pandemic. We are all human. So much worry about the economy when it is really our health and how we look after ourselves and each other we should be concerned with. If we are not alive, then there is no economy. Politicians fail to see this. I am writing, therefore, through a 13th century text, the Hojoki, into the 21st century, with advice from a monk to myself. Our visions of our individual worlds feel similar. Like Chomai, the author of the Hojoki, I have a preoccupation with houses and what they mean about us and our times. A house displays our preoccupations. I have been involved with doing houses for most of my architectural life. While Chomai's circumstances changed significantly when he arrived in his 10-foot square hut with little else except himself to define him, I have a carapace of books and objects around me and know little about myself, like a cicada shedding my nymph skin regularly, but staying much the same inside. So from the Hojoki, ceaselessly the river flows, and yet the water is never the same. While in the still pools the shifting foam gathers and is gone, never staying for a moment. Even so is man and his habitation. So then this is a couple of poems that were translating specific kanji. The first one is like a gate and is a Japanese word ma. So I'll read that one first. With ashes against this black background, the fire with immense violence raged. and of the houses within its reach there were none. Pleasure grounds were turned into rice fields. Hear the joyous clamour, keep off the sun. The forest trees reach close up, bewailing the vanity of this fleeting life. I have neither fear nor resentment. My only luxury is sound sleep. What shall I have to regret? This thatched hut is some type of sin. And so the second kanji is also in Chinese pronounced ma. It looks like a little horse. A most extraordinary thing. While babies continued to feed, the hills crumbled. Pheasants were mistaken for fathers, and in this impermanent hut of mine, looking like a mendicant priest, I abandoned this world and retired. There is no direct translation of the first of these kanji, ma. Many architects have grappled with it. It is a tricky one for me, though, since it's pronounced ma, and my partner's name is also Ma. And for him, it means horse. But he is Chinese, and the Ma I know, or thought I knew, is Japanese. There are two of them, therefore, both the same and completely different. So then there's some sort of pontifications about that. So, so do we want to swap? Do you want to read something, or will I read something else and then we can?
I would love to hear you read something else. I'm also
Okay.
talking about the architecture of my life. And I was thinking about, you were talking about the body of work, like you've been, right, architect, but also that you're building a life, the architecture of my life. I was just struck by that.
It's a bit weird, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. I have one piece that is very different and sort of I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll see. Um, I bought a painting at Hermannsburg, which is in Central Australia, which my great-great-grandfather established as a mission in the 1800s. Everyone thought it looked gloomy, this painting. It hung on the wall in my house behind the piano, so no one except me would see it. I remember the colours as dark and dirge-like, but also strong and defiant. When I pull it out from where it has fallen, I find my memory of it is wrong. It does have a dark dung-coloured background, but over this are yellow ochre and khaki green dots, as well as tiny, deep, full-bodied red ones that contrast brilliantly against the other colours. There is a strong diagonal through the painting. The corners are cut off by representations of thick banana fruit vines. It is a women's painting and shows women working together. The women sit under the sky, an arc of stars and the moon moving over them. Each woman has her tools laid out around her. Each is working independently, and yet they are together. The red dots are scattered around them, points of conflict between them, perhaps. I wanted a painting that represented my journey to Hermannsburg, the first time I had visited Central Australia with a mob of Aboriginal people, my first time to see the place my great-great-great-grandfather followed his calling. This painting shows movement, a spiral into, then out of, a centre. I am the centre. Everyone is sitting around looking to me. Your move, they say. You can be held here in the centre of it all or move on out if you so choose. It reflects my swirl of emotions there, yet it has me sitting alongside other women. I met and then lost a sister in Central Australia, not a blood sister, but one to whom I am connected by life. When I found her again, it was as though we had never gone missing. The return visit with her was too fast for me to fully take it in. I tried to text her, forgetting telephone signals can be weak and fluky in remote locations. I haven't seen her since. So I selected that because I thought so much of your pieces, Carrie, and of losing things, of bringing things in, of transforming things, yeah, of mothers and mothering of birthing and guides and things, I think. So, yes.
And it's funny, you've ended up here in a circle of women. No
Yeah.
offense.
With Don.
Fun. Moving
Yeah.
on. Well, what if I read a couple more and then we can kind of
Yep,
go?
that'd be great.
Maybe. So this book was started at the very end of the poem that I had read was talking about, I think I mentioned vanished twin. And at one point, my mother had told my sister, this was probably 2017, to say, we were estranged. And she was like, tell your sister that she was born a twin. I have a sister. She's younger than me. On my birth certificate, I was not born a twin, but that kind of like sat there on my mind for some time. And so when I started to look in um, and explore what if I did have a twin? It would have to be a vanished twin, right? And what would that have been about? Um, and so anyway, the process of looking inward helped me to kind of find these other guides. And I did this whole process of doing some yoga, meditating, and I would do different yoga poses and it would lead me to different guides. So it's a speculative memoir in that it is autobiographical, but it also tells the truth in surreal, metaphoric ways that can't be expressed other ways, I don't think. So this poem is one in which we meet the second guide. Rabbit is the first one, and I spend some time talking with Rabbit in the book, but I don't want to give away all of my secrets. So this one's called She First Saw Old Stag Several Years Before They'd Met. In a gravel driveway, she comes across a part of his carcass, can't look away, can't keep looking without wonder, takes wide steps to greet him, hovers a pulse, and then plunks down, stiff knee and all, to squat, to peer closely, this need to witness skull, to claim somehow these familiar remains along a stranger's weedy windrow trees. Today she summons old Stag's presence. She unfolds dog-eared pages of questions she kept. She thanks him for bearing what all she'll never know of, not now. She searches for words like browse and Forbes and hard and soft mast instead, that he would have loved to have heard. She draws evergreen leaves and clover, chicory and vetch and buckwheat, oats and alfalfa and rye. She gathers a great pile of last year's acorns and this year's early summer seeds and berries in honor of him, of tonight's post-solstice strawberry full moon. She arranges them on a bed of mosses and mushrooms, on stones themselves quilted with ageless lichen in every possible form of filament and pigment. She makes a basket of her arms, the same shape they made circling around his neck when he would stride her out to safety. She leans, she bows forward into the tender tang of the woods, her cheek on the soft nest of her offering, and folds over on her stomach the way she'd slept as a small girl, and wept. She wept sweetly. And so, thank you. And so that was Rabbit and Old Stag. I don't think we're going to meet twin in the readings I've chosen for today. But what these end up being, since the book is written, it took me just a year to write. My first poetry chapbook took me 10 years. This one took me a year as the one was finishing. It just kind of fell right out. But it's about childhood trauma, but it's also about generative trauma and trying to break that cycle. And so I'm a psychologist by day. Well, I don't know that I can take that hat off. Anyway, for money, that sounds wrong. Anyway, and our coping responses to trauma are generally fight and flight. We know that that's like anxiety, right? But then we also have fawn and freeze, right? And so fawning is where the people pleasing comes in, and freezing is where you just shut down. And so as I go back and I look at all these guides, I'm like, okay, so let me see if I don't want to. I think I had it all written out at one point. Now I can't remember. Here we go. Okay, Old Stag that I just read is flight. We'll meet Wall here in a bit. He's freeze. But people pleasing has been my fatal flaw, and that's fawn. And so I'll read about this later on too. But I'll just read one more poem right now, and then I'll give it back to Gillian. I'm just going to give you a new name. Anyway, this one is a kind of an illustration of the Gillian that I was talking about. And there's other pieces that kind of sprinkle around and give information about my mom. This is the one today that I'll read. This is called As the Part of Her That Never Left Chickasaw County. Imagine how to be one of a pair of girls, how to be the daughters of an exacting, of an insecure mother, how to reckon with the charisma only you two could see through, how to pry below her diamond-studded skin to find the hands that once shoveled pig shit, that collected chicken eggs, streaming, the smell almost a concussion just to look inside the hen house, never mind wade in. How the smell stains her school dress like onions, having to wear blue jeans under to walk through dirty snowdrifts to school after. How she sat in class, knuckles of her left hand wrapped by the nuns' wooden rulers each and every day. We imagine her unlearning each of her innermost truths this way. Her, the oldest girl of what would become 8, washing dishes 4 meals a day during harvest, only 5 years old, standing on a stool to reach the farm sink. We imagine her named by her father, this unique, this ostentatious name she could not hide behind. Imagine learning in our 20s it was the name of the first woman her father dated, the one that got away, the one before he met and married her mother. We would wonder if she was ever loved by him at night. We imagine Ardell Rose, the blonde, the oldest girl, who eyes so nearly resemble her first daughter, the one she hates almost as much. Thank you. That's a cheerful ending.
I was thinking, oh no. Maybe we need another one.
I can read an easy, fast one.
No, I don't have to read it fast.
Well, it's called Spooky Action at a Distance. If you ask quantum physics, it will tell you everything is just a matter of scale. It can't say exactly if you and your vanishing twin are entangled or not, but when particles share space in such a way that they cannot be described independently, then observing one causes an irreversible collapse within the other. And I wonder, what is a collapse without a hope for consolidation of the rubble? That's a little handoff.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure that mine
Well,
adds what the next thing I was going to read not necessarily adds much to that.
But it's interesting, I think, how your search for home and self is kind of what I'm looking for too, to create a home within myself. And so
Yes.
I think that there's these similar kind of unspoken, well, I guess yours are actually spoken out, right, in your book.
But yes. Yes and no, because yours is very explicit there too. So it's not that it's, you have to, it's there, the sort of echoing of it there. And I think, a whole lot of those words is what, whenever we talk, we sort of, there's always that echoing between the things, isn't it? Even though they're quite different, it's really great that that's there. This next one is sort of strangish, but I think I thought of it because of the body and things, and comes out of that. You said yoga, some of you, to find your guides, you were doing yoga and things like that. Well, I guess some of my guides, although I never had anything so explicit as that, but is finding things through doing Aikido. And Aikido is doing things in relationship with something else. And you always have to do Aikido with someone else, which makes it also very problematic for me and kind of, yeah, it's a funny. So anyway, this is a little bit about Aikido. And one of the things that O Sensei, who is the founder of Aikido, spoke about was that, Aikido was the way of the gods. So this is a sort of leads into a poem about the way of the gods. I'm here in relationship to you, but also with you. I can declare one way or the other who I am, who I want to be, who I choose to be, who I choose not to be. To make a choice in these and act on one of them, I risk losing the other possibilities. At times, I enjoy being in a position of not knowing for certain. In this not knowing, there is possibility. In this not knowing, I can be everything. Kanagara no Michi, way of the gods. Organs huge as continents, connective tissues as tree roots, pulled up beyond snapping point, stretched, polished, transcended. Walk tall, sacred being. Cross the floating bridge of heaven over the serene mountain lake. Feel your center leave the ground. Look down into the shining waters, ruffled with flat green leaves. White lotus flowers, golden centers afloat. Dragonflies shimmering there. Look up past the yellow fringed clouds, through their airy depths into a starry, formless field. Notice how you vibrate. Move through, reach out, gather up, gather in, gather round. Roots dangling rootless, mouth open toothless, head thrown back, lips open wide, gulping. Earth is already lost to you, spiraling into infinity. You will be greeted on the other shore in the pure land of Monju. And then from the Hojoki, to go on foot and do one's own work is the best road to strength and health.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And you do, I mean, you draw from so many different places, from Aikido, from a soccer match, from from, your training as an architect and your experiences in the work world, but also just your wanderings with your mother. And I mean, there's so many different places that we visit in order to kind of assemble this collage of what that experience is like for you. And then there's enough space around that to kind of imagine what that space might be like for myself as I'm reading it. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. More from you, more from you.
Okay. I don't remember which one I have marked next. Hold on. Okay. So I'd mentioned wall is one of the guides, was the frieze. And so this is a story of wall. You can't blame the stone for its strength. In the tornado dreams, she never had time to feel scared. Those parts, if they ran fast enough, always land on their feet, find themselves deep in wall's keep. But the parts that were curious, the parts that she is mostly, the parts that want the choice even when they asked nicely and had all been well behaved, if they arranged the body into legs against the wall pose to honor, to placate, to submit, and when they ask to meet it gently, even when they beg, wall blocks them all. Is intellect and bone, is arthritic stone, is gristly, avoidance, an impenetrable, a thing unto itself, is always, has always been, had stood like this for all her years. Until she doodled a stone enclosure and fitted a black iron handle. Sometimes the wall is also a door, she says, and draws a keyhole too. She begins to feel her way in. Her hands reach ahead of her in the dark starlight of mind. A murmur of tiny eyelid twitching and almost nostril flare. Here is the first smallishness that had ever required Wall's strength. Her refuge, her cage. And once recognized, this young part rises free to swim in the warm ocean of her body. It leads her to stairs, to a narrow column of Jenga blocks, a stack of bulging discs. She clambers up onto in the coolness, the damp. She finds the idea of wall in the root cellar smells of old wood and rain, in thick in thick slabs of stone, finding shelter in abandoned homes. She can hear Wall deep within her skull cave, earthen floors worn smooth with pacing. She conjures an image of him sitting there like a regular person, feet up on an old steamer trunk he uses for a coffee table. She is here, she says, to renegotiate Wall's contract. Suggests he might like to retire soon, have more time to travel. He agrees. He signs the paperwork, hands over the schematics. He explains the workings of the wishbone latch at the throat, the one he uses to shut out the dirty rabble of loud and unruly. She nods, appreciative, and leaves, follows the long pathway of the trachea, reaches her thin fingers into the bottle of her neck, and reverses the clasp.
I love that one. I really love it. I'm going to have to get your permission to use it with my architecture students.
Oh, yeah, please.
No, I like the personification so much of the wall. It's really great. And I don't feel like enough of my students kind of feel that way enough about buildings and wall, like it's really wonderful. Thank you. That was really, really great.
My pleasure. Yeah, yeah. I can read one more and then will you read some more? Okay. This is one of the other guides. This is fawning, which is about that people pleasing, but this is kind of where we meet fawn. And then there's a long poem about fawn, and then there's a long poem about vultures, and that's how the book ends. So this is the one right before that. This is called Fawning. Not very original. Well, it's about fawn. Here we go. Okay. Fawning. She builds the fawn around her of sticks felled in the brisk winds from the old cottonwood, each limb barkless, creamy, smooth, each set of legs set at a skittish, an awkward angle. The girl fashions a hide of worn, thin chicken wire wrapped around her sharpest corners and plied in layers of paper mache, pulped from the scrapbook pages Grandma made for him, handwritten captions in that square and even cursive for her firstborn, that first year, before the first set of twins. Stiff photo squares pulling off from their dark yellow tape moorings, brown newsprint toasted with time and deckled at the edges with neglect. She coos softly, almost purrs to herself as she works the paste into the paper strips, into the spaces still left or torn open, into whatever else will hide her from this cage of her own making. She weaves a small broom of her old stitches and sweeps up the bottle caps, shards of plastic, stripped cigarette filters, walnut hulls, pebbles, and metal springs left behind. She makes a bedding of it. She tucks her cold feet up into her layers as the fawn is marionetted about, is buffeted on the prevailing whims of others. She is lulled into a sort of slumber by the erratic rocking, by the loving knocking, by the goings on outside of her pinata skin. Thank you.
Really great. Did you say you're going to read a longer one, one of the Vulture?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll do that after you read something.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. I'm not sure. Um, I can read uh I can read the sort of the matching piece at the end to the one that's at the start that you read, if you like. That's called Homebody. And so again, it's sort of like two lines of short, I don't know what you call two short lines, with a word with a horizontal with a vertical bar between them. Home, hone, bone, bode, body. Home, tome, time, tile, till, tell, sell, self. Home, body, self. All the same. All paths lead there and back. Sometimes it takes longer to return than it did setting out. I am still me. I am still home, wherever it is. The path was perhaps shorter than I had imagined. I wanted everyone to be there, my mother, my father, my grandparents and theirs. I wanted everything to be there, home, body, aikido, place. But Chomnai never tried to accommodate everything. He spoke only of himself. He saw himself as a single silkworm. I too see this, but my threads are interwoven with so many others. As I write, I keep losing the thread. Just as in life, I keep losing favourite books. I want to check something in Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. I can't find it. There is something else to look at in The Cows. I can't find it. I think of reading The Country. I can't find it. I can find none of the books I want to refer to. When I can't find a copy after searching and searching, I order another copy. Usually when I do this, the original book turns up the day after the new copy arrives. When I read the book I thought I needed, I find nothing of what I wanted. Trust me to become bogged down in something unimportant. The truth is, I want to find a book which will show me how to end, how to find me. I can think of none. After days and days of writing and searching, I realize that everything is right there before me, hiding behind those other books where I didn't look. I wanted my homecoming to be joyous. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted to recognize myself as I arrived. It wasn't to be. I should know this. A house is merely an external shell that needs to be reshaped to suit. All I needed to do was to spend more time with myself, meeting me. I wanted certainty and have been driven to find it, but I am becoming more certain of my uncertainty, and maybe this is fine too. I am none of these things and all of them.
That gave me goosebumps, Gillian. Yay. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. There's this little quote from the carrier bag of fiction, right? So it may feature the idea of the carrier bag, similar to the Zuihitsu, is that it may include conflict, but that's not the main point of it, like the traditional storytelling, but only as a necessary element of a whole, which itself cannot be characterized as either conflict or harmony, since its purpose is neither resolution nor stasis, but continuing process. And I think you might have said it more beautifully. So,
Oh, I cannot imagine.
okay. This last poem is the long one. It's from the last chapter in the book called Tornado, which is one long poem called How the Vulture Lost Its Voice. Vulture has no melody or mimicry, unlike the songbirds who take full advantage of their voice box, their strengths, making several sounds in and out. An organ evolved from the dinosaur while they still had a functioning larynx as well. It's a mystery as to why or how. And in all this abundance, the buzzard benefits from neither the syrinx, which she does not have, nor the larynx, which for her has no vocal folds, no sound at all forged from the trachea to where it forks into the lungs. She can only hiss and grunt and maybe wheeze. The turkey vulture, catharsis aura, which means purifying breeze. In early spring, after the wasp nest was cleared from the swing set, having already been stung once, the Vulture Girl climbed to its tippy top, wrapped her arms around the cool, hollow metal tube, and would warble the softest, high-pitched syllables into the ether, her voice like ancient tuning reeds. As the sun slanted brightly through the bare trees, this wordlessness scarcely breathed, so Wall wouldn't know. She sang, she came gently unbound, until the sniffling made it hard to make any other sound. Before it was known as the wishbone, the furcula was called a merry thought, and believed to grant a wish to the holder of the larger end of it when pulled apart. Before then, the bone was used in the prediction of upcoming storms. That process has been lost to antiquity. The tornadoes would chase her in her dreams as if they could seek her out, were sentient, were teasing her, their gyrating columns of terror skittering to the foreground and then faltering away, whole families of them spiraling to earth all at once, these storm systems, and their greedy scrabbling, their destructive clawing fingers colonizing the turbulent skies, and she would hear the sirens, would urge the people around her to run to safety, to get into their root cellars, to keep behind wall, like she was always doing. The word furcula means little fork. It makes us think of tuning forks, of pitchforks and resonance. It is a fusion of their clavicles. It strengthens the thorax to withstand flight, acts like a spring between the shoulders, storing the energy of the upstroke as it expands, then contracts in a snap to pull the wings down, filling the body with air at every wing beat, holding its breath as it glides. It wasn't until she would wake up when she would recall that the tornado's open maw was roaring and churning inside of her. Regardless, whenever she closes her eyes or is still for too long, always a whirling cesspool heaving inward and her, looking down into the verge of its bottomlessness that she has always been just on the brink of. She felt as if she might have to break herself open if she was ever going to make herself whole, to dig herself out with her own goddamn fork. Tear herself apart by the collarbones and give one half to someone, to anyone else, and pull with all of her gizzard grit that this time might be different. This vulture body seeks the sun, stretches up, raises its wings, opens elbows, pulled back, and scrapes the scapulae together, lifting and lowering to massage the spine. It reaches arms high, hands clasped, and arches her back again, lets the neck open to the sun star, lifting its beak, swiveling the back of her bald head against the fat of her shoulder hump. Slowly blinks its nictating membranes and exposes each ear hole to the warmth, to the cleansing heat of sun. She solemnly bows forward, tail feathers spread, and resets, shaking everything loose, feathers aerated like empty pine cones. There, she has paid her respects. Now she must feed. Still, the girl dreamt of cyclones menacing and thick with debris, pocked with flocks of Victorian-styled shoes, perforated and pointy. Always she'd be huddled behind damp cinder blocks, blood thumping in her ears. As above ground they hunted her, it wouldn't be long until she would try to swallow the tornado itself whole, by the handsful, until she would empty the bottle of pills, until dusty powder residue was all that was left, until she finally slept without dreaming, until some of that tornado seeped out through the black velvet of activated charcoal, swirling up her esophagus like bats swarming at sundown. A cotton batting, a tinnitus of silence. Until the rotation of hot magma returned, now with metallic harmonics, now pushing her toward the hurtling stench of its grasp, until Wall engineered that wishbone latch. The poor were often proffered bread and mead or wine to be eaten over a corpse, an exchange that counted the sins of the departed toward the damnation of the fed, an absolution of guilt for those who could afford it, and a reverse Last Supper for the sin eaters, who were regarded as unclean, who had to keep a respectful distance. The reason for that stance, the heraldic pose with her wings raised high and flapping, is the sun, with her wings raised high and flapping in the sun, is for the bird to disinfect herself in the heat, to cleanse, to rid herself of whatever her own piss or vomit hadn't. The root word refers to a dance in Hebrew, though we all circle like steam from a kettle across the heavens. In Sanskrit, it indicated a form of astrology, of predicting the future, stretching so high as if to peak over the horizon of time. Feeling a little less untethered than usual, Vulture Girl, now an old woman, wondered if her trauma were not a tornado anymore at all, but a funnel cloud-shaped murmuration of streaming vultures, having fed off it until there was none, peppering the sky with their dance, spreading pieces of it throughout all the expanse of the infinite prairie summer skies, diluting it and then airing it out to dry, purifying it in the heat of the clean white paper sun.
Whoa. What a wonderful spot to finish. I feel like I want to reach through and give you a huge hug,
Oh, yeah.
as to Ruth and Don and all of you people listening as well.
Oh,
Yeah, it
yeah.
was wonderful.
Thank you so much for giving our books homes
Yes.
Thank you.
and
Thank you
thank
for
you for hearing us
both of
today.
you for wonderful books. Does anybody have a question for either of our readers? Yeah? Nobody?
We got to,
Yeah, Diane.
Diane.
I don't know if it's a question. I just want to say that I've been living in my house by myself for almost 20 years now. And I had never thought of my walls as a friend. I mean,
yeah.
that just opened up for me a whole, although of course I've heard about walls because I've been in analysis and I've been talked to about boundaries and I know about walls and all that kind of stuff. But there's something about both of you, your way of talking about home that is so concrete and of this world and so transcendent at the same time. And it's so hard in ordinary life to hold those two domains together. And that's what I really felt a lot as I listened to the things that you were saying about house and self. And I think too, for those of us who are writers, our words are also a way that we build the house and build who our homes and who we are and where we live and what we say about ourselves to ourselves and to everybody else. So it was just really so rich. I'm keeping on talking, but really I'm feeling overwhelmed with the
Yeah.
with it.
It was,
Beautiful, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
it's beautiful.
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah, that
thanks.
thing that you said about words as walls, one tends to build oneself into a little place, don't you, where you can't escape particular words that you use.
Right. And you look for words. I mean, I don't know how many times, and some of you will have heard it many times, where I say we need a really good sentence for that. Next time we'll have a sentence. We'll figure it out. And it's the same thing.
Because words also are the way out of the wall.
Yes. Yeah. The architecture, which is I mean, that word sounds so abstract, but that abstract aspect of it is helpful as
Yeah.
much as the concrete detail of it.
Yes.
It gives you enough distance to be able to kind of revisit.
Yes. To step outside. Ruth, that thing that you always say about the observing self,
About
the
what?
witness self,
Yeah.
the witness, the inner witness.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
I
Thank
think
you.
I think Sandra might have had at one point her hand up.
Sandra.
I did. Thank you so much for this amazing reading. And Gillian, it's finally nice to see you in person. I've seen you all over social media, and I think we've exchanged comments once or twice, but here you are in the flesh.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
to Ruth and to Don for hosting this. And the question is a little bit tangential, but I don't know if this makes sense, Carrie. The end of one of the poems was she hated you almost as much as she hated me.
It was, yeah. So the title of that poem is also a kind of a sneaky, I can't find a thing without these on, is also kind of a sneaky. So it was, the last line was, who I so nearly resemble her first daughter, the one she hates almost as much. And the title of the poem is As the Part of Her That Never Left Chickasaw County.
Right. And I just, it almost felt to me that that was the center of something else. That it wasn't just in that poem. But this was, and I don't know your work, Carrie, so please excuse me if this is something you've discussed
Oh,
before.
no, no, it's
Um, but it also it triggered the idea of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and I wondered how much of the I in the narrator was also going through that, as well as what was trying
oh,
to be.
the self-hatred sort of.
Yeah.
Maybe yeah. Oh, yeah. And how do you purify that and live with it and form a self that isn't traumatized or isn't hated
Mm.
and we don't you can't do that without accepting and naming and claiming, I think.
I wonder also, and that's absolutely salient, if it is the thing that does the claiming and naming of you rather than having something generated from the self.
Oh, I really like that concept. I'm going to have a good think on that one.
That's what the line led me to, I felt.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much for that little
Yeah.
gem. Yeah. Mm.
Well, this has been a wonderful occasion, and the video will be probably next week or sometime soon. Will be on the YouTube channel. And next month we don't have we're taking a break next month, so there won't be an August reading, but we will be back in September with, I believe, Tanya and Marcia Meyer. So thank you both so much for this.